Yeah, he's ordered shoes, yes. Yeah, try them on, just make sure that it's... Your name is...
I love that one. It's got the same smile on that as he had on everyone, hasn't it? Michael was a lovely lad and he would do anything to help anybody.
Michael's future, I think, would have been a bright one because he was a hard worker, he earned good money, and I think he would have settled down and been successful.
And yet, there was this chance meeting, this twist of fate, this decision that he took to drink in a pub that he didn't ordinarily drink in, that effectively changed the course of everybody's life.
I'm lying there in bed and my phone's at the side of my bed. Phone goes. She went, it's been stabbed. Well, I went watching, well, I was just frantic. I said, where is he, where is he?
Michael had 5 stab wounds, tragically one to his chest, which would prove to be the one that caused the most damage.
You'd expect your mum and dads to go before anyone, and to see your son in this way, you just go, what is going on here? This is not real. We're living in a false world here.
This isn't really happening to us. You're not taking my baby. Don't take my baby away from me.
His only crime, if ever there was one, was doing the right thing to stop someone else from being injured.
He was trying to protect the woman from being hurt, and he ended up getting stabbed.
Some days I get up and I think, has that really happened to us? Has it really happened to us? Well, yeah, it has. This was the day Michael was born, and Gary couldn't wait to come up and see him, could he? And what you said, he said Gary was really excited.
I know he's made up there, really made up to see him.
He really was. Well, he was his little brother, wasn't he? That they'd waited for 9 months. We've got a big family. There's myself, Gaz, Anthony, Christopher, Gary and Michael. Michael being the baby, the youngest one. I think he was born about 11:25 in the morning and pops out a beautiful baby boy.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Couple of hours old.
Yep. Little Sumo. The big lad, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was a 10-pounder, wasn't he?
He was nearly 10-pound boy.
I like to think that we've been a family who people look up to, and I really mean that. Michael was a very popular lad. He was a very likeable lad. Like I say, in the community, he played football, he mixed about with everyone. He lived with us, Michael, but he stayed with friends as well.
You know, his friends have said, oh, Leslie, he was the life and soul of the party, or Michael, no matter where we went. He was a funny lad, Michael, he was. He had a great sense of humour. 6 o'clock had come and he'd come to that window. It was a big unit, he'd go, Mum, what have you done for tea? You know. Or if me and Gaz was going for something to eat, he'd go, Mum, I'm coming. You know, he'd go, well, me and your dad was going, no, well, I'm coming and I'm going to bring Gary or I'm going to bring such a back here. I'd go, oh, go on then.
A lot of my boys work together because one's a plasterer, one's a kitchen fitter, and the others were tilers.
My other son, Christopher, took Michael on as an apprentice tiling. And, he turned out to be quite good at that.
Come on, hurry up.
He was tiling my bathroom upstairs, and my wife Leslie said to me, Gary, we could do the new bath. So I said, there's nothing wrong with the bath, what are you talking about? Like you do. So we went out. When we come back, Michael had very conveniently dropped a tile through the bath. winked at his mum and says, "You've got your new bath now." And that was Michael. He loved his mother.
Everybody loved him. You know, he was a character, but he was a nice kid. He worked hard, and I'm very proud of him.
Michael come home one day. He said it to his mother first. "Mum, his girlfriend's having a baby."
That's a fantastic memory for me because it was an happy memory and a happy memory for Michael. And he was so made up, our Michael, so made up.
Ellis was born the 13th of April, 2012. Great occasion. I'll never forget it. Bright redhead.
I was there, me and Michael was there at the hospital with Ellis when Ellis was being born. And we're both there and we're both crying. But that moment to see his face when he was delivered was amazing.
Great dad. He loved his son, loved him, spent a lot of time with him. I think his future was to, you know, settle down and just get on with life and look after his son.
He'd been to work and he came home and he said, "I'm going out." And I went, "Right, that's fine. Let me know if you're coming home," because sometimes he'd stay with his mates.
That one decision that Michael took that day was going to cost him his life and was going to turn the lives of everyone who knew and loved him completely upside down.
We got in bed, I think it was about 11:15 at night. But I heard all the sirens and helicopters and I'm thinking, oh, I hope all my lads are all right, because I don't know whether they've all gone out or what they've done, and proper panicky really, you know.
On the Friday the 14th of October 2016, just around 11:30, a number of calls, if I'm not mistaken, were placed through to the emergency services, through to the ambulance service, and the police were dispatched to get as quickly as possible to the Friendship Inn. So when officers had arrived there, it was a scene of chaos and disturbance. As you can imagine, people were very upset. But amidst this, there was one young man that had been stabbed very seriously.
We was in the house and we'd not gone out, we was in bed. And we got a phone call off a girl who we knew.
My stomach just done a somersault and I went, "Hello?" She went, "Hiya, Leslie, it's Leanne." I went, "Hiya, Leanne, what's up?" And she just went, "We heard about your Michael." And I went, "No, what?"
It says your Michael has been stabbed outside the Friendship pub. Well, we jumped out of bed, you know, we never moved as quick.
And I was just frantic and I can't really remember what I was thinking or what I wasn't thinking. I just knew I had to get to that hospital because I had to see him. I had to make sure he was all right.
Michael was clearly losing blood, and a lot of blood, particularly from his chest wound. It would have been very difficult for the police to interpret precisely at that stage how many stab wounds we were dealing with.
I was like, I couldn't comprehend it, to be fair. I was like, why?
We knew something was seriously wrong, but that journey it's the worst journey I've ever had.
I'm just thinking, oh, where have they stabbed him? Have they just stabbed him in the arm or I didn't know who, what, where, I just didn't know.
What we seen in that hospital was frightening. All we wanted to do was see Michael. We just wanted to see him. We expected him to be awake.
Then we walked in. He was on a life support machine. I just fell to my knees. I was just like, Michael.
He'd been put in an induced coma, and they said to us he's in a bad way. You just go, what is going on here? This is not real. We're living in a false world here.
Given the severity of what had unfolded, and we knew right from the offset that this, at the initial phase prior to the individual passing away, was an attempted murder. And severity was the highest level, really.
Middleton is on the edge of the city of Manchester. It's a small area which is part of a town called Rochdale, and there's quite a high concentration of pubs. The Friendship Inn is of particular interest because in the previous years there'd been a number of violent incidents there. The pub already had a reputation of being perhaps a dangerous place to go if you weren't a local.
In some murder cases, of course, it's unknown. It's a chance encounter or a premeditated encounter, and the police have the work cut out in terms of determining who that could be. In this particular case, because of local revellers and because of people that had actually seen what had unfolded before their very eyes, we knew almost from the offset who was responsible or likely responsible for this attack.
The person who did it, they knew, and he got on the run.
Police were able to build up a picture from the number of people that were outside the pub. The attacker was a man called Timothy Deakin. We knew that he had departed Manchester. He'd looked to escape justice almost from the offset. But once we knew who he was, we were determined to catch him.
We'd not heard of him ever. When we found out his name, never heard of him. Who is it?
I don't know what I was thinking, but I weren't thinking that it was that critical, because they put him in a reduced coma, and I didn't know that. Whether they did tell me or not and it had not gone in, I don't know, because I can't really. I was in a bit of a state, to say the least, I don't really know whether they told me or they didn't. I can't remember, to be fair.
He was there 3 days at the hospital. We didn't know what was going on. And we were watching him, and it was horrible to see a lad who was full of life just, asleep.
Gary and Leslie Hoolickin were in bed in the middle of the night when they received a phone call that their son had been stabbed and was in the hospital. And they knew that Michael was not a troublemaker. He was a good kid, he was smart. So you can imagine the fear and panic they had. Why in the world would he have been in a situation that he was harmed like this? What could have gone wrong, and what was going to happen next?
I thought, Matty, come on, Michael, you're a strong boy. Come on, you can pull through this. You're a big strapping lad, and you can pull through this. And this went on for 3 days.
He gave everything, 100%. And we knew if anyone's going to pull through, it'd be Michael.
I was working for a regional television station, and it was a Saturday morning. That morning, we had a series of emails from all the regional police forces, and one of them came from Greater Manchester Police that said there'd been a stabbing outside of a pub in Middleton called the Friendship Inn. The police approached us and asked us to put out witness appeals on the evening bulletins for Timothy Deakin in a bid for them to track this person down who'd effectively run away from the scene and was fleeing justice. This was a manhunt.
He wasn't a local kid, Tim Deakin wasn't from Middleton. Michael didn't know him at all, we know that. Never heard of him, my lads had never heard of him.
You know, seeing a family devastated and broken, desperate for any glimmer of hope that their loved one could turn it around despite the medical sort of diagnosis here. You know, it really affects you when you see that. You can't help but the human side get close to wanting to see justice for the Hoolickin family. Timothy Deakin was already a number of steps ahead because naturally he knew what he'd done before we even knew who he was. But sadly at that particular time, Michael was in an extremely poorly way.
Michael had gone out to a place he never went to, funny enough. He never went in the pub, the Friendship.
There was CCTV at the pub that everyone had been in. So that was vital because we were able to build up an understanding of what had taken place. We were able to understand who was wearing what, who was stood with whom, how the sequencing had unfolded, and the camera doesn't lie.
And an argument had broken out between two drunken groups in the back room that Michael had the misfortune of sitting in to have his drink.
The catalyst for Deakin being called was nothing more than his girlfriend being out with his sister and his girlfriend believing she overheard a disparaging comment that was made towards her. Nothing more than that.
Deakin had been drinking at the Summit, which was a pub not far away, and one of the group had effectively reached out to Tim Deakin and said, "Your sister's a mess, could you come and get her home, please?"
He had been told by his girlfriend that a group of lads had said disparaging things towards her, that his sister had abandoned her, that hadn't come outside, had left her on her own.
Deakin came in, he went outside with his drunk sister to get her a cab to take her home. One of the regulars who'd been outside having a cigarette came in to say there's a bloke outside who's battering a woman. And Michael, being Michael, stepped up and went outside. And you can see just from the edge of the CCTV that it is at that point, when he steps outside, that Timothy Deakin, he decks it and he knocks a spark out. And at that point, the cab rocks up and he's dragging her by her hair into the cab.
Michael was the first to approach Deakin and try and stop him attacking his own sister.
And at that point, Michael stepped in and effectively said, "What are you doing? You don't treat women like that." And in a very, very short space of time, Michael was stabbed 5 times with the lock knife.
It was crucial that we told the family this, as difficult a piece of news as that might be.
He was in the pub minding his own business, having a drink. Someone shouted out, a girl's being beat up outside. Well, Michael, he's been brought up that you don't disrespect women, you look after them, and he's been brought up that way.
Victims of something like a stabbing tend to fall into 2 categories. They're either connected to the criminal underworld, like they might have ties with certain gangs and they might get into fights relatively regularly. But on the other hand, you have people like Michael who are just at the wrong place at the wrong time, in a context like trying to stand up for somebody else that they don't even know.
It's frightening, it's just a crazy situation. It's one that we wish we wouldn't have been in at all, Before you knew it, news travelled fast. The police had told us, we know who's done it. I was more frightened of him sort of escaping and getting out of the country or something, because we knew that my lad was in a bad way.
They got us all in a room one day. They just said, it's not working, the treatment we're giving him. There's nothing else we can do. And I just sat there numb and I wanted to scream. I was like, please don't say that, don't say that, don't say that.
They had to turn everything off. And he was pronounced dead. And, oh God, it was the worst. Bear with us. The worst news you could ever be told, believe me.
Losing him was the worst day of my life, because you don't expect your children to go before you, do you, you know? It was horrible, and I just remember I said, "I love you, Michael." And he had a tear coming down his cheek, and I just put my head on his chest and give him a big hug.
Oh, you can't describe it. Seeing your son asleep in hospital, and you can't speak to him because he's not there.
The parents of Michael Hoolickin had to take that horrific decision to switch the life support machine off, which instantly moved this from a serious wounding, actual bodily harm, into a whole different category. This was now a murder.
Michael's homicide had a full investigative team that were going to work around the clock and do everything they possibly could to catch Michael's killer. And looking at the nature of this particular crime would give any investigator with experience the impression that it had been committed by a man who was no stranger to violence.
Well, I was frightened to death of him. You feel like, you know, what goes through your head where you don't realise. I hope he don't escape out, you know, the country and think all stupid things, really.
I thought, what if they don't find him? And he's roaming around to go and do it to someone else?
Let him off the streets. Please get him arrested, please.
It's a race against time. From the moment we have a suspect, an identified suspect, we know there is a chance that with every passing hour, day, week, that we see a deterioration of the evidence as well as the deliberate disposal of evidence.
Here you had a violent offender who had gone on the run. This was someone who was prepared to use violence and a knife.
So it was crucial to the police that we apprehended him as quickly as we possibly could.
August 1989.
Some belt. That's an absolute beautiful picture, that, isn't it?
I know. No, that's a cracking picture, that. Here and Michael. Really nice. My family means the world to me. They're everything to me. So, yeah, we had a nice life. The week before it happened, I was getting ready to go out on a Friday night, and I was getting ready in my bedroom, and Michael was getting ready in his bedroom, and I had the radio on. And Andy Williams came on singing "You're Just Too Good to Be True." So I'm singing at the top of my voice because I think I can sing even though I can't. And he comes over the landing doing this, dressed in a dead smart blue shirt and jeans. It was just such a sweet memory, you know. Just wish I could have more of him. Just wish I could. I just really wish I could just put my arms around him and just give him a big hug. I love him.
The police come to our house and told us all about this lad. And they said that he was, you know, he was a bad lad.
The man who killed my son had gone on the run. And they said, he's gone on the run, but we will find him.
After what he'd done to Michael, we wanted it more than ever, you know. Get him off the street, please.
As a result of really detailed police inquiries and intelligence, we tracked Deakin to an address in Liverpool. He was possibly surprised that we got to him so quickly, but it was very clear that he knew why we were there and what this was about. And on Wednesday, the 19th of October, he was arrested on suspicion of Michael's murder.
When they phoned us and told us they'd actually arrested him in Liverpool, we was so relieved. Believe me, we was thanking God for this.
Dad, I hope he rots in hell, because he's just destroyed my family. The devastation that he's caused my family and his friends and all my family is horrific.
Michael's son was only 4, and he didn't know what was going on. And unfortunately, I had to tell him. And I says, "You won't be seeing your dad again, kid." And he went, "All right." Didn't understand. So I says, "No, God's come down for him." And Ellis, obviously oblivious to the fact that his dad had been killed. But after a while, he thought about it and he says, "Can we go to the airport and get an helicopter and then go and see my dad in the sky?" Well, we broke down, all of us. It was horrible to hear. It shows you the way he was thinking.
All my boys have had the pleasure of having their dad all their life, and he's had that taken away from him, and that, I hate that thought.
What he's done to us is that Deakin, that Tim Deakin, what he's done to this family, he's destroyed a lot of things that was going, which were positive and which was perfect. He's destroyed all that.
Timothy Deakin was arrested at an address in Liverpool. Deakin chose not to say anything to the police. He provided what's known as a no-comment interview and didn't answer any question that was presented before him.
It was a great relief when we eventually heard from the police that they'd picked this man up and that he was due to face justice and that he was going to appear at magistrate's court the next day.
Once we swept the area through our crime scene examinations and through members of the public that came forth, actually, we were able to recover that knife, and it was so very, very important to this investigation. Not only did we have the weapon that sadly and tragically cost Michael his life, but from a forensic position, we were able to connect that knife with the actual injuries.
People were saying to us, Middleton has gone in mourning over Michael. All the shops, that's all he was talking about, the death of my son. Everyone said it, the funeral director, he's never seen anything like it. Never seen a funeral as big as that. The priest said he's never seen the church, like, just absolutely hammered with people. When we went to the cemetery, unreal again. It was full, the cemetery, you just couldn't believe it. But these things, you don't remember them as clear as what you should do, because you can't take it in. You know, you're burying your son, and it's just, you can't take it in. Heartbreaking.
Very, very quickly, you can start to build a profile of the attacker, and we were very quickly able to establish who Timothy Deakin was. Internet searches provided us with previous criminal history and court reports.
Timothy Deakin received a custodial sentence from the courts in relation to an offence of grievous bodily harm.
4 years, 8 months he'd been sentenced to for an unprovoked attack, biting a man's ear off in another fight in a pub. But when a prisoner's reached a certain point in their sentence in the UK criminal justice system, they are eligible for release.
As a result of his licence conditions, he would be released and would serve a period of that on what they call licence, but he would be subject to a series of conditions to manage him in the community.
It's basically a contract that an offender must sign that says, I will adhere to all these conditions, and that is called a licence agreement.
So Deakin was a man on licence when he was determined to be the suspect in relation to this crime. So that was awful news for the family, that.
To me, he shouldn't have been out, and he was out, the man who done it to my Michael, and to me, they should have kept him there. Should keep him in there for life.
With this man, Timothy Deakin, carrying a knife, that suggests one of a couple of things. Either he's so confident that his probation officer is not going to find out or do anything about it, or he literally doesn't care about the consequences.
The police investigation had, in my opinion, created an extremely compelling case that he was Michael's murderer and that he committed other offences too. You can never say never until that trial is concluded.
The trial is coming up in Bolton on a certain day. It seemed to take forever. So we was being warned, you've got to behave in court, because you can imagine my sons were fuming with this guy. So we turns up and Tim Deakin appears in the back. First time we've seen him, shown no remorse whatsoever. Looked at us with an evil face, if anything, you know, pulled his face. And you're looking at him and you're going, I can't believe what we're seeing here. This kid don't care, you know.
Timothy Deakin was charged with murder and he pleaded not guilty.
Timothy Deakin was going to introduce a defence of self-defence.
For Michael's family, they're not used to these criminal trials. They don't know what tactics the defence team are going to use, so they just don't know what to expect.
We was in court and they tried to get him off. This is what is unreal to me. He's admitted he's killed my son. And they're trying to get him off. They're trying to say, well, you didn't mean this, did you? Well, you didn't mean to go there, or you didn't. And it was frightening.
The attempt was made to say that Michael Hoolickin was coming at me and that I found this knife on the floor and that I picked the knife up and in an effort to defend myself, I flailed around with it and accidentally I killed him.
I mean, the streets of Middleton aren't littered with knives. So the idea that somehow he was actually the victim was, to be truthful, preposterous, really.
I was angry, but I was more upset because it was my son. You know, it really upset me, the things I heard in court.
Michael was not a bully. He'd never pick on anyone. He'd protect his mates, he'd protect his family, which is normal for me, you know, that's the way he's been brought up. But there's no way he'd pick on anyone, so he's not doing this, you know, as a bit showing off or being cocky. He's doing it to protect that lady.
At the trial, the jury have a whole load of evidence that they use to make their minds up. Eyewitness, police reports, forensic reports. One utterly crucial piece of evidence at the trial of Timothy Deakin was the CCTV, which had been taken from outside the Friendship Inn. What was caught on camera were the last living moments of Michael Hoolickin. You see Timothy Deakin come into shot. Here we see Tim Deakin inside there, and then he's about to leave the pub. He's taking his sister home. Here you see the argument spills out into the street. Oof. And he's just slapped his sister so hard that she collapses in the street. He hits her so hard, you see her cigarette fly out of her mouth across the street and she falls to the ground. It's at this point, just out of view, that Michael emerges from the pub. Michael challenged Timothy Deakin when he saw Deakin battering his sister, and Deakin stepped up to him, and Michael got the better of him and knocked him to the ground as Deakin came at him. Tim Deakin's defence was that he fell to the ground and that the lock knife was on the floor, and that it wasn't taken with him to the scene to sort out any trouble. But at some stage here, and I think that's it, you see him take something out of his pocket and it changes hands from one hand to the other. There he is, pulling the lock knife out of his pocket.
If Timothy Deakin was just acting in self-defense, one stab would be more than enough. That would say, stay away from me, stand back. But that wasn't the case here. The fact that he stabbed Michael 5 times shows this was blind rage. This was an anger-driven offense, not out of self-defense.
You've heard the evidence in court. You want this to go the right way, but you can never call a jury. You can never say from being outside of the sanctity of that jury room whether there is somebody within that group who believes that reasonable doubt has been sown.
I thought, we've been through all this, the trial, and I was like, I hope to God they never let him out, ever. Not while I'm on this earth anyway, I hope they never let him out.
This is so difficult for families to endure, and the only thing they keep thinking is, for it to all to be worth it, that person has to be found guilty.
When you get the knock on the door, as the jury foreman comes back into court, and the judge asks, have you reached a verdict? And is that verdict unanimous? There is a flip, even as a journalist, that goes in your stomach.
The final verdict was that Timothy Deakin was found guilty of murder.
This was the judge. I was the one who gave you 4 years last time. He said, so I'm putting you away for 27 years minimum. Well, you could see the relief of the police officers, everyone in the court. You could see the relief and like to say, yes, he's been given a long time.
It was only at Timothy Deakin's sentencing that we realised that he'd breached his licence conditions and that he shouldn't have been out at that time of night.
Well, this is when everything come out. It was frightening. And I mean this, it was frightening.
He was on curfew. What was he doing in the pub that night? Why did nobody flag up? Why did nothing flag up that he was out in the pub?
And it was only at the point at sentencing that part of the truth actually came out, that Deakin was a huge risk to the public, that he was classed as a serious and prolific offender, that he had a catalogue of violent offences already under his belt, that he stood a huge chance of reoffending, and that the probation service hadn't done their job. They hadn't been able to keep the public safe from this violent and prolific offender, and that is why Michael lost his life.
Timothy Deakin was only 23 when he got sentenced. Of course, there's an age-old debate when it comes to violence and criminality, nature versus nurture. And I think this is a classic example of nurture.
He was from a broken home. He had not attained in education, so his life outcomes were limited.
In the end, while those are mitigating factors, they do not excuse cold-blooded murder.
He's got served 27 years minimum, and he was off the streets, and we knew people were going to be safe without him around, so that was good news to hear.
Whatever sentence he was, and ultimately was given, it genuinely does pale into comparison when you look at what is taken from that family.
People say, time to kneel. No, it's not. Michael will be missed forever, I promise you. We always wonder where he is. There's times when you think he'll be in a minute and you know he's not here. These are things that affect you mentally for the rest of your life, and not acceptable. You just feel so angry.
It really upset me, the things I heard in court about the man. Probation knew what type of person he was. He was a prolific offender. You know, so why have they just let him slip through the net?
We said, we need to do something about it. We've got to stop this thing happening where people are getting murdered unnecessarily. And we need a public inquiry about all these deaths.
Clearly there were aspects of Michael's murder with questions wrapped around them, and in particular in relation to Deakin being on probationary licence, that needed a greater level of exploration. So His Majesty's coroner at the time sought that and sought to run an inquest.
The really crucial failure that came out at the inquest was that Timothy Deakin had been arrested in another force after smashing up a car that he'd stolen, and he was in possession of drugs. That incident should have resulted in him being charged and immediately being recalled back to prison.
That makes me angry, very angry. And I hope to God they never let him out, ever.
The coroner did an incredible job and uncovered a whole series of failings.
He's gone to a better place where no one hurts anyone. And he's with all his grands and granddads, isn't he? And all his friends that have passed away in the past. Don't really want him there, though. I'd like him to be back here with us.
Me boy, eh?
But we can't change that, can we? Wish we could. I just wish he was here with us all, and to see his own son grow up, and what a lovely lad he's grown up to be like, you know, and that upsets me a lot, because he should be here seeing all the wonderful things with his son and seeing that he's very much like his dad.
I'm like his father figure, and I make sure I'm always there for him.
Michael was my baby, and I miss him so much. And every night before I go to bed, as you can see, there's pictures everywhere, and I've got one in my kitchen there, and I stand on the step and I blow him a kiss and I go, love you, night, God bless Michael, and I kiss every picture. Because I think he needs to know. Just awful.